Welcome to the Ally Effect with Allyson Blythe, authentically living life your way. We all contemplate making changes in our lives that would allow us to live more authentically, but it can be hard to take action. Allyson is here to educate, equip, and empower you with the tools you need to start authentically living life your way. Get ready to eradicate your limitations and destructive patterns as you take full responsibility for your own happiness. This show is not just talk. It is conversation for profound self-awareness, acceptance, and appreciation, the key elements to stepping into the power as the creator of your very best life. The Ally Effect with Allyson Blythe starts now.
Hey everyone, welcome. You're listening to The Ally Effect, authentically living life your way with me, Allyson Blythe, certified life coach and licensed clinical social worker. You can join me the first and third Thursday of every single month right here on Transformation Talk Radio as we dig deep into this concept of authenticity, supporting you in learning how to simply be yourself. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? Every day, in every way, you should just be able to show up and be yourself. And yet we all know in today's world with filters and expectations and different types of things where we're expected to perform in all these capacities, authenticity can be incredibly vulnerable. Stay with me for the next hour as we talk about this idea of authenticity, cover yet one more topic in supporting you with actual tools, tips, and resources to authentically live life your way. Excuse me. This is where you can come to transform through practical tools and some real talk. So it's my opinion that everyone needs a toolbox. If you think about it, every single industry equips their people with the proper equipment that they need to get the job done. A handy person has an entire tool belt or a toolbox available right at their fingertips. An accountant has their computer, a calculator, and QuickBooks, formulas, different things to help them do their job. A stylist has their shears and color products. A surgeon has a scalpel and all those other different resources to perform surgeries. And a dentist, a hygienist, a mechanic, a repair person, an electrician, a carpenter, they all have tools to get the job done properly. And yet most people go through the biggest job that they'll ever be assigned, this thing called life, not once ever being properly equipped or educated with the tools that they need to do this big, huge thing called adulting that we're all expected to do. If we get real, this is a show about authenticity. If we get real, life is hard and people struggle. I said last time, do you ever stop and look around and wait for the real adult to show up in your life? I'll be honest that life itself is one of the main reasons people enter my office doors. They aren't crazy. They're not weak. They're not incompetent or inept in any type of way. People just simply need some input, some advice, tools in order to figure this thing out, getting a basic handle on life, concepts, strategies, and different issues that we all tend to face. In reality, 30 years of practice of seeing probably by now tens of thousands of people. And it's my opinion that people aren't really equipped for this basic thing of living. Things like making hard decisions, knowing how to have profound conversations, setting boundaries with people, managing your time, establishing your priorities, all of the different things that really help us adjust and function in life. And yet most people aren't taught how to properly suit up and show up for the biggest job they'll ever be called to do, just simply life. And I believe it's my mission and my responsibility to change that. 30 years counseling, coaching, to educate, equip, and empower the people that I work with. So today we're going to continue our conversation with a toolbox that I've created. I want to hand you tools separately, one at a time, really that any person can use. I believe that people will be more equipped if they use these tools and they know about them. The last time we were together, I offered you five tools to get you started, just kind of an introduction to some basic fives. And the fun thing about this is that when this information was coming to me, I started with the alphabet and I went through and just identified specific tools according to each letter of the alphabet. And so last time we started with 5 of them: awareness, really helping you be awake, alert, and alive at your own wheel in life, knowing how and when and with whom to set boundaries. B is your boundary tool. Commodities, the C tool, time, energy, and effort, and helping you really know how to properly spend those very valuable commodities. And then D stands for decisions. Every single day, one decision on top of the other and how that affects you. And then E stands for energy, and the ways in which you are affected by energy. You can learn to move energy, and the reality that every single thing, every conversation, every person, every object is energy. And how is it that you're influenced by different types of energy? 5 tools, when properly used and intentionally equipped, can be a real life changer for you and helps put you in the driver's seat of your own life, helping you to do this task, this adulting life task that we're all called to do. We're not done yet. Obviously, we only went through 5 of them. So today we're going to continue to cover the alphabet, just building one at a time. And so last time we ended on E. This time what we're going to cover is the letter F. And for the sake of this toolbox, the letter F stands for feelings. What I want people to understand is that every single person has feelings. You might not know what they are. You might not be very well versed in identifying them or knowing how to manage them. And if you are an empath, this toolbox has a special emphasis for everyone, and yet especially for empaths. If you are an empath, chances are your feelings are very deep and very profound, and this is going to be a very relevant tool for you. Many times people don't know what to do with feelings. I find that this is kind of the new F word. People are like, it's like hot potato. People are often like just kind of juggling it around, trying to just get rid of the feelings that they have. Feelings are often identified as things like weaknesses or problems to be solved, like there's something wrong with them or wrong with a situation. As an empath who probably has very big feelings, you may even mistake other people's reactions and emotions about things, even as your own. You may absorb their emotion, and it might be hard for you to decipher what's theirs versus what's yours. You may also have very deep, profound feelings, even more so than very typically wired folks. So understanding that this is all about learning to identify feelings and understanding that this is just your opportunity. It's like a knock at the door, an intuitive sense that something needs your attention. Maybe you're someone who feels a lot of things at once. It's not uncommon to feel multiple things at one time, even very contrary emotions. You can feel both positive and negative ways about the exact same things. Here's the important piece that a lot of people do not know. Feelings are energy in motion. That's it. Energy in motion. So we talked about the tool of energy. Feelings are cues, pieces of information that need your attention and your inquiry. They're immediate sources of intuitive information with insight and guidance, right? You get this emotion, and it's like a knock at the door that needs to be investigated and checked out. Feelings are not always fact, right? They're very real, but they're not always the best or only place to make your decisions about someone or something. That's why I say it's like a knock at the door. It's like, what's going on? And what is it that's happening inside of me? How are you doing with listening to your feelings? Do you pay attention to them? Do you have a lot of judgment or ridicule? Do you deny the emotions that come up inside of you, or even what's causing those emotions? Or this is a little bit more my style. Are you on the other side of the scale that as soon as you have an emotion, you kind of like pop off or you react to it? Something's going on and you just are in that reactionary mode. That is absolutely more my style. I'm very emotionally driven. Sometimes it takes some practice to kind of reel yourself in, get some perspective, get yourself grounded. Is it hard for you to be able to really process and regulate your emotions into right size? I find that emotions are often labeled in a couple different ways, good or bad, right and wrong. And my friends, There are absolutely no good or bad feelings. There are no right or wrong feelings. They just simply are. They're energy in motion. They're indicators of something that's going on. Maybe it's something that's inside of you, right? Maybe you need to go take a nap, or maybe something's been going on inside of you that needs your attention. But there are absolutely no good or bad feelings. What happens is that there's often behavior that's linked to a feeling. So many times people will assume that anger is really bad, but there's probably a connection with violence or some kind of uncertainty or trepidation that goes along with the emotion of anger, that they've confused the emotion with the behavior. Emotions are just intuitive senses. That's it. They're sources of information that really require your attention and your acknowledgement. I want you to recall Stacy. Do you remember from last time, that last episode, when I introduced you to my client named Stacy? She was the same woman who came into my office where a lot of people were assuming that she had mental health issues, things like depression, withdrawal, anxiety. She was starting to become really isolated and feeling really indecisive and just kind of stressed out, something that we all can probably relate to. She was finding it harder and harder to go out. And so people were concerned about her and really assuming that she probably had some type of mental health struggle and needed to be medicated. She came into my office, thank goodness, and this is often the case where I see people right in that pivotal point. She worked hard for several sessions trying to kind of understand, taking in the emotions that were surfacing inside of her. And over a course of time, we were actually able to shatter that perspective that there was something wrong with her. And she started to use her feelings as those intuitive guides and cues that were kind of nudging her along in certain ways. I hadn't seen her in several weeks. She had been dating, if you recall, she had been dating like this guy that someone had been really, her friends had wanted her to be in touch with. She came in to my office and she had been out with this guy on several dates. It was a guy that all of her friends knew and loved. He had gone to college with all of them and then had moved out to Seattle, but he had moved back recently and he was interested in meeting people and in dating. And they actually had been out 3 or 4 times by the time she came into my office. She shared about the things that they had done, the places they had gone, the new foods that they had tried. And I could just kind of, this is a part of being an empath, I could just feel her. Something was off. And I said to her, so how are you feeling? And she said, oh, I get her shoulders dropped. She's like, I knew you were going to ask me that. You see, that's the problem. Everyone's telling me how great he is, that he's really this perfect fit for me. But every time I go out with him, something is off. I can't put my finger on it. He's nice. He's really good looking. He comes from a good family. He's well educated. He's well traveled. He's got this brand new great job. My friends all love him, but I don't. And she kind of had this funny look on her face. I don't like him. So, oh, okay. Something didn't feel right to Stacy. She couldn't name it. All her friends were trying to dissuade her, talk her out of it, and give her a really hard time trying to convince her she was being way too picky. And I asked her again, how do you feel? She said, I feel uncomfortable, really weird and awkward, like I'm trying to force myself to feel something that I don't. And I asked her, so what are you going to do? And she said, well, I'm not really sure. And I said, well, what do you want to do? She said, I want to cancel the date. You see, Stacy was having a hard time. She was trying to feel something that she didn't feel, and she was trying not to feel what she did. She was listening to the opinions of other people and allowing those to override what her instinct was really telling her. When we come back, I want to share just how important Stacy's feelings really were in helping her make some decisions about what was right for her. We need to take a break, but you are listening to The Ally Effect, authentically living life your way with me, Allyson Blythe. When we come back, we're going to keep talking about this toolbox, and I'll give you an update about Stacy. Stay tuned. So we're back here on The Ally Effect, authentically living life your way with me, Allyson Blythe, certified life coach and licensed clinical social worker. Today, we're talking about a toolbox, just simple life tools that I believe everyone needs just to face this thing of life, adulting, trying to figure things out. If you have some questions or if you have any input, if you want to kind of check out my material, please feel free to do that. If you want to call me on my good old-fashioned landline, 859-341 7773. You can always be in touch with me via email, which is AllysonBlythe@live.com. Or maybe you just want to check out the material that's on my website, which is AllysonBlythe.com. And if you need a booster on a daily basis, you can check out any type of social media format, which is Allyson Blythe Life Coach. Before we went to break, I was sharing about this tool, this F tool, which stands for feelings. And I was telling you about the story of my client, Stacy, the woman who, came in because people thought she was mentally ill. They thought that she needed to be medicated. And yet the same woman who had started to date Mr. Perfect, that's what she called him. And yet she just simply kind of knew that he wasn't so perfect. And she had the courage, after we had this conversation about how she was feeling, she left that session and actually ended up canceling the date with him, which was really exciting because it was so honoring to what was right for her. So imagine my surprise when over one weekend, I hadn't seen her in a couple of weeks, and over the weekend one time I got an email and it was from Stacy and it was marked important, all caps, red. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I opened it right away and she had shared with me this news. Remember, Stacy's feelings were kind of cueing her into the fact that something didn't feel right about this guy. He seemed perfect on paper. All of her friends were continuing pushing and kind of insinuating that he was the guy and she was being more of the problem. Well, in this email, she shared with me that she got news that Mr. Perfect had actually been arrested the night before. It's some kind of charges of drug trafficking. And she just was like blown away. She was marveled at the way her gut and instinct knew that he was simply not okay. Something was going on with this guy. It was just a feeling, but it was a feeling that was spot on. And the more she tried to deny and suppress it, the more anxious and uncomfortable she became. She knew it all along. And despite others' input, their endorsements, and their criticism of her, she had been practicing these ABC tools. She was more conscious and aware of what it was that was going on. She knew very clearly how she felt. She was trying to establish boundaries. She put that final boundary up by canceling the date with him. And those commodities of understanding how her energy was so deeply influenced. And is this how she wanted to spend her time? The decisions she made to end the relationship, right? Really being able to understand how these tools are meant to build into each other. You do not have to act on every feeling that you have. They are not the best places to make the decisions, right? Sometimes we need to use both head and heart. However, emotions are incredibly important for you to tune in and pay attention to. If something feels off, uncomfortable, or scary in some way, it is your intuition trying to inform you, maybe to sit still, maybe to take action, maybe to redecide, maybe to break up with somebody. I'm not really sure. But those emotions of heebie-jeebies are really trying to cue you into something. It is your gut trying to warn you. And so feelings, for the sake of this tool, they should never be denied, suppressed, minimized, ignored. They are just simply a direct link to your insight and intuition. So obviously I could go on and on about feelings, but we're going to move on. We're going to move to the letter G. And this is for the tool of gratitude. And please hear me out when I want to run through this whole thing before you kind of come to your own assumption about gratitude. We've talked about the importance of energy and feelings, and gratitude is by far one of the highest energetic fields you can possibly practice. It's totally contagious. You've probably been around people who've just gotten really good news, or they're just naturally kind of happy and excited about what's going on. Gratitude will shape your thoughts, your perspective, and certainly your outlook about things. Years ago, one of my best girlfriends and I had this practice. We had a daily routine that every single day we would text each other 5 things that we were grateful for. Sounds easy, right? Like pretty simple, but here was the catch. We were not allowed to repeat anything. Every single day for months upon months, we chose 5 different things that we were grateful for with no repeats allowed. Every single day, I had to tune in and focus on 5 different things. It was not always easy, especially on hard days, especially disappointing or exhausting days. It was not always fun and it was not always easy. But what it did allow was to train our brain and our focus to specifically look for the things that were right in the world. Every day I had to hunt for those things. And it was absolutely an amazing journey. Sometimes I wonder, I don't know why we ever quit. Probably like most things, you just one day turns into another day of not doing it. But it is a powerful, powerful practice. It is the highest energy vibe that you can possibly carry. The practice of this can help you stay very focused on high flying vibes. And in my opinion, it's like exercise for the soul. It keeps you aligned, in shape, and attracting more and more of all of that positive stuff that you want to focus on. But here's where I want to offer a little bit of compassion and perspective. I find, and we'll talk about this in another tool that's coming up, I find that sometimes this tool is really misused and has been misrepresented. Sometimes people will just roll their eyes when I introduce this tool because sometimes gratitude is like forced down someone's throat. If you've had a crisis, people are like, oh, well, you should probably be grateful. And like, hold on a minute. Sometimes gratitude is really used in a way to negate things or kind of talk you out of emotions or struggles that you have. I believe that gratitude is a practice, and I believe it's what I call an and practice. Keeping your eyes on the things that are positive in the world doesn't negate, deny, or ignore the things that are hard or that you're struggling with. It simply draws your attention to the things that you do want or the things that are working right. Let me give you a different example to see if this helps drive home the point of this tool. In my neighborhood, I live all the way at the very end of a cul-de-sac. But on my way to and from the house, there's a home where people have moved in and they are dealing with issues of hoarding. And over the course of years, I've watched the material mount. It started to come up through their windows, like you could start to see things. And when you looked into the house, you could hardly even see in. The garage door was always open. And I don't even know, so you could put a piece of paper in that garage. There was so much stuff. And before you knew it, it started to bleed out into the side yard, the backyard, and eventually into the driveway. And it was a lot. It was a lot to look at. It was a lot of energy that I could feel in every single day. And it troubled me. I was distressed. Not my business, but my eye was totally drawn to that every day. And it only came to my attention what I was doing when one day a very, very dear person just simply took my chin and moved my vision away from what I was most struggling with. And I was like, oh, maybe I just don't have to look, right? I had so many other things I could be looking at, but where did my focus go? Straight to the thing that disturbed me the most. So that's very much like gratitude, or all you have to do is move your focus. It doesn't negate it. It doesn't mean that you have to like or be okay with the thing that's troubling you. But what it does do is shift your focus. Okay. It's a practice. And maybe you can use it very much like my girlfriend and I did, that we just share different things. What I would encourage is that you write it out. It's fine to think about. I mean, but I'd rather you even think about it than not doing it all, but write it down. And man, it's so powerful for you to do that. Maybe you identify 5 things at the beginning of your day and the end of your day. The more deliberate you can be about your practice, the better. So the tool of gratitude, and you don't have to just kind of digest this negativity and be really okay with it. I think that there's a new term like toxic positivity or something like that. That is not what I'm referring to. I'm saying shift your focus to the things that are right in your view. Okay, so that's the tool of G, gratitude. Now we're going to talk about H, and H does not stand for hoarding. H stands for higher power. And I'll be honest, this too can be a little tricky and a little controversial for people. Oftentimes, people have some gunk, some confusion, some devastation, perhaps some hurt and misrepresentation of this tool. Religion, rules, routines, rigidity, right and wrong often has been kind of skewed into this view of a higher power. And religiosity and rigidity have been pumped into people, implementing kind of these elements of fear into your belief systems. I will tell you that my slate is completely clean. I have no expectation and no definition of what your higher power needs to look like. I can never define that for you. As a matter of fact, what I would highly encourage is that if you do have spiritual gunk or residue or even trauma, that you take some time to explore your pain with God, helping you explore and define for yourself who and what you want this higher power to be in your life. I don't care what it looks like. I just really recommend that you have something, a relationship with a power greater than yourself, so that you can lean in. Life is really hard. It's challenging, and it can be incredibly scary and overwhelming. Knowing that you have someone or something, some kind of identity that you can lean into and align with is a very powerful coping strategy. And yet, I'll also encourage you to take the time to explore and define what your beliefs are about a higher power. It's worth the time and the effort for you to do. Existing in this world can be incredibly scary. And if you're an empath, it can be even more so. Trying to go it alone can be way, way too much for people, very scary and very depleting. Having some type of practice, a healthy, helpful guide that you kind of lean into is very much like spending time with a safe parent. It's a level of nurturance and guidance that I believe we all need. There is so much use of this entity of God and certainly religion. And if you do have hurt or confusion about any of it, I just want to encourage you to iron that out. For the sake of this toolbox, H is for higher power, developing some type of relationship and practice that you can use to align with. Your relationship with higher power, I believe, is your direct link to your emotions, to your instinct, and to your intuition. Prayer, meditation, worship, quiet, stillness, yoga, hugging a tree, walking on the ground. It doesn't matter. They're just very powerful ways to align you. So there we go. We've got more things to add to the toolbox. We've talked about feelings. We've talked about gratitude. We've talked about higher power. We need to take a break, but I am Allyson Blythe, and you're listening to The Ally Effect, authentically living life your way. When we come back, we're going to continue on through the alphabet talking about this toolbox. We'll be right back. We're back here on The Ally Effect, authentically living life your way. I am Allyson Blythe, certified life coach and licensed clinical social worker. This is a show holding space for you to develop tools, tips, and techniques, really educate, equip, and empower you in authentically living life your way. During this episode, the last episode, I'm offering a toolbox for people. Every single human needs to be equipped for life. And a lot of times we sometimes get to a point where we simply just don't know what to do. My hope is this toolbox offers you just quick little inspirational ways to things to grab for when you're looking to get the job of life done. So we've talked about several. We'll recap at the end, but right now we're landing on the letter I. And today we're going to talk about I standing for intuition. And I could probably go on and on and on about the power of the instinct, the gut, aligning, listening, and respecting that intuitive sense of knowing is the relationship you have with your intuition. I want to again remind you of Stacy and her dates with Mr. Perfect. And the way that her intuition was kind of whispering, kind of nudging, knocking at her, using her feelings to kind of speak to her that like something was just off. The intuition was trying to alert her that Mr. Perfect was not so perfect all along, and something higher than her really knew that. The instinct is your gut sense. It's your way of knowing something, often on an insightful, intuitive, instinctual way that cannot be explained with facts or logic. Stacy's friends they had experiences with him. They hadn't dated him, but they hung out with him and they partied with him and they went to class with him. And so they knew him on a lot of levels. So fact and logic and kind of that paper that we all felt, who's the person of your dreams, right? All of those things kind of logically drew her to the fact that he should be a great person for her to align with. And yet her gut simply knew. It's your job, your responsibility, your intuitive sense to listen to when that gut is speaking to you. Just like your higher power, it's essential to develop a loving, trusting relationship with your intuition. You don't always have to understand, you don't always have to like it, but when the intuition speaks, it's really important to listen and honor it. I believe that the intuition and higher power are really one and the same. I think that they're deeply connected with each other. They work in conjunction to support each other. And the more you are connected and use your intuition, the more clearly you're going to be aligned with the higher power that we just spoke about. This is such important stuff. And again, there's such a practice to developing a relationship. Just like we're talking about aligning more with your higher power, aligning more with your intuition, knowing how it speaks to you. Sometimes it's like, ugh, just like this gut sense that you're like, you know what you know. Again, if you are an empath, you probably get gut sense and a lot. Sometimes it's just like this, like we said, the kind of the heebie-jeebies, like, oh, wait a minute, like that's the intuition, right? Knowing how and when your intuition is speaking and nudging you, and then trusting it no matter what. Maybe we'll talk more about that because that's such a vital tool. So for our toolbox, I is intuition. What's your gut trying to tell you? All right, so we're continuing to travel. We're going to go through the letter J. And if you have ever worked with me for even a very short period of time, almost right out of the gate, I try to give everyone I work with two basic tools. The very first one is self-awareness. You've heard me probably talk about that on every single episode that I've offered. Self-awareness, awake, alert, and alive at the wheel. You just kind of, you're paying attention to what's going on inside of you so that you can make decisions accordingly. That's one blanketed tool. But the second one is journaling. And this is such a funny tool. People have very different reactions to this tool. Sometimes people are like, oh yeah, I journal, I do that, and it's okay. And yeah, they know the value of it and the purpose, and they've been doing it for years and all that kind of stuff. They already have a practice established, and that's kind of cool. That's an easy one to kind of assign people. Other times people haven't really tried it, or they don't use it very regularly, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, and they're willing to give it a whirl. And then other people are like, I'm not doing that. Like journaling, I hate it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not good at it. And they just have this straight up resistance and refusal about it. People tend to get all up in their heads about journaling. They overthink, they become way too technical. They get worried about if people find it, or they worry about kind of what to write or how to write. They worry about how it's going to sound and how it's going to be. They try to apply all of the proper punctuation or grammar or spelling. You guys, none of that is necessary. Journaling, I'm going to be a little gross, but it's kind of important because we all do it. Journaling is very much like going to the bathroom. It's like this dumping ground for you to be able to just kind of purge and process anything that's been rolling and scrolling around inside of you that needs to come out. We have permission to go to the bathroom, right? Like we have to grant the same permission to mentally and emotionally have this place to be able to purge. It can get pretty funky up in there, right? If you're not getting rid of those thoughts and those emotions. Journaling is fun because it can take on dozens of different styles and formats. Oh, I was going to grab it. I have a journal that's absolutely beautiful. Like it's gold flecks, and it's got an angel, and it's got all different kinds of colors. It can be fancy dancy like that. It can be a scrap sheet of paper. It can be a list. It can be it doesn't even matter, right? Like it just doesn't even matter how it comes out. It can be, you can journal about a situation, the day that you're having, the day that you want to have, a problem that you're facing, a situation that you're not really sure what to do about, the things that you would like to say, try, have, do, right? There's a conversation that you want to have with somebody, maybe writing out what it is that you want to say, something that you're struggling with or dealing with in some way, something that you're dreaming about and you want to accomplish. It doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter kind of what you do to journal. It's just the process of getting rid of some of that. There's a technique I refer to as clustering. And again, if you've worked with me for a period of time, chances are you've done a cluster about something. And what clustering is that you take a word. Maybe you're facing a conflict, and maybe you're fighting about money. So you put money in the middle of the piece of paper, or love, relationship. Success is another one. Maybe you've got some childhood issues, and so you write family in the middle of the page or on the top. It doesn't matter. And then you just start to free flow. Maybe it's a word. Maybe it's a memory that you have. Maybe you use different colors and ways. Like it's just this stream of thoughts and events and circumstances, associations that you have, so that you can get it all out on paper and be really clear about the things that are happening inside of there. Clustering is a very powerful technique to be able to use. If there's something you're struggling with, put it down on paper, right? Give a theme and then just start clustering, writing about what it is. You can use your journal as kind of like a PRN, right? Anytime you need to. Somebody doesn't use a hammer every single day. Chances, I mean, maybe you do, but rarely did somebody use a hammer every single day. But when you need it, you better have it. Journaling is very much the same way. Maybe you don't use it most of the time, but when you need it, it's something's you're facing something, you go to that journal and you kind of purge through it. Maybe you can do it on a daily basis. I know when I was in some deeper, darker seasons of my life, I journaled every single day, sometimes pages at a time, and it was all gunk. It just needed to come out, and it was so much history and pain, and that, and that served its purpose. I'm not in those seasons anymore, thank goodness, right now. And so my journaling looks much lighter. It kind of focuses on very just sentence based on how I want my thinking and my day to be. That's my journaling practice. There's an author who wrote a book called The Artist's Way. And she talked about a technique called morning pages. And in the morning pages, what she recommends is that you just do 3 pages nonstop. You never take your pen off the paper. That's stupid. I should be sleeping right now. What the heck does this person want me to say? And then just like the handkerchief effect, it's like all this stuff starts coming out. I've done that practice before, just kind of like the gratitude thing. I've actually not done that in a long time, but it is really powerful. I mean, you talk about a cathartic cleanse. That's a beautiful way. Julia Cameron, The Artist's Way. If you're having trouble sleeping and you kind of wake up or you're having a hard time falling asleep, just like you probably go to the bathroom before you go to bed, maybe you need to do that emotionally and mentally. Maybe you need to purge a little bit. Have a notebook by your bed, sit down and write before you go to bed, so that you can just do a little bit of purge. Maybe you think about kind of how your day has been or the things you want to get to tomorrow. So that's not rolling around in your subconscious by the time you go to sleep at night. Please don't overthink this tool. You don't have to perfect it. You don't have to perform it. No one's going to read it. If you're worried about that, shred it, burn it, get rid of it, right? All I want you to do is just free flow with whatever it is that needs to come out inside. And if you want an added bonus to journaling, ask it questions, right? This is how you tap into your intuition and your higher power. This is what I mean, that the tools can work in conjunction. You can use your journal to inquire about your higher power. What should I do? Give me some direction. What should I seek? Right? All right. So there's the tool of J. Next up is K. I seem to be doing all of the controversial ones today. This is interesting. This one too kind of has a little bit of flair to it. For the toolbox, or the tool of K, stands for kindness. And I wrote about this in Misunderstood. If you haven't read that book, Misunderstood, the rewriting of rules of dignity and self-respect, I want you to hear me out with this tool. I believe kindness is by far one of the most beautiful ways we can ever show up in the world. I'm the one who really designated the empathy challenge, right? Like, I want people to use this tool so much more. And yet I have one caveat to that. I want you to use this tool properly and with pure intentions. Oftentimes, kindness is totally misrepresented, and there's a lot of funky assumptions and motives that people have. And if you're an empath, having a lot of misunderstanding about kindness because you feel so deeply and you have a lot of compassion and tenderness, you may mistake things for kindness, such as a lack of boundaries, patterns of caretaking, enabling people, absorbing their emotions and taking it on. My friends, that is not kindness. It's codependent and it's very destructive. If you tend to get into one-way relationships and you're the person overextending, overreaching, functioning, this is not kindness either. It is absolutely toxic and it will cost you greatly. I want you, just like I encouraged you to use that SOS, sense of self tool of self-defining with higher power, I'll encourage you to self-define what kindness needs to look like and why you're actually doing it. If you engage in a lot of mismatched relationships and you're feeling frustrated and depleted most of the time, I wonder if you've reached that point that I write about in Misunderstood of fed upness, right? You're just sick of it all. You're fed up with things. Having boundaries is not unkind. It's one of the most necessary. It's the second tool, for goodness sake, right? Having boundaries is one of the things that's going to equip you for adulting. Knowing how to say no, how to change your mind, how to change your behavior, to end an obligation or a contract that you have with someone, maybe even end a relationship, fire someone, follow up on work or tasks that have not been done. These are not mean or unkind. They're actually very necessary tools that you have. If you're struggling with feelings of resentment, exhaustion, overfunctioning, all these unspoken feelings that have really festered then there's probably some hard conversations that you need to be able to have, learning to be direct, maybe re-decide. Kindness is not, this is what's controversial for some people. And if you don't know this, you might get your feathers ruffled. But if you have ever struggled with this, you'll know and align. Kindness is not a one size fits all. If you are someone who's overused kindness to try to get people to like you, to stay, to think highly of you, to help you in the future, that is absolutely not kindness. It's manipulation, and it's really, really codependent. Kindness with pure intentions. The more kind and boundaried you are, the healthier you'll be to show up in relationships. Kindness with pure intentions, with a cup that's very full, boundaried, knowing how and when to invest in relationships. That's the kindness tool that I'm referring to for this toolbox. We need to take another break, but you do now have more tools: intuition, journaling, and kindness. When we come back, we're going to wrap up this section and talk about a few more tools. You're listening to The Ally Effect, authentically living life your way. We'll be right back. We're back here on The Ally Effect, authentically living life your way, with me, Allyson Blythe, certified life coach and licensed clinical social worker. If you want to be in touch with me, please do so. AllysonBlythe@live.com is my website that will direct you right to all the ways to contact me. Today, we're talking about life's toolbox, the way for you to be educated, equipped, and empowered in authentically living life your way. I've been following through the alphabet and trying to offer tools that align each to help you with this thing of adulting to get you through life. Most people don't know what to do, and I want to change that to offer actual tools to help you be more educated, equipped, and empowered. So a toolbox, anyone in life, and if you're an empath, this is going to be a toolbox especially aligned for you. We're now on the letter L, and this one is incredibly, this one is really important, and we've talked about it in many different ways. L stands for language, and I want to recap some of the things that we've talked about before. Language influences absolutely everything. It shapes the way you see things, the beliefs you hold, the perspectives that you shape. The way that you speak to and about anything is important to assess and understand how it influences you. Two of the most important words that you will ever utter is I am. These will shape your lens and your perspective about you. They set the foundation for your entire belief system, how you show up, what you believe you deserve. How is it that you refer to yourself? What type of language do you use? And is it serving your highest and best? How you want to be in this world and how you want to feel. Pay attention to the language you're using to determine if it's aligning with who and what you want to be. If you use negative reference, I'm stupid, I'm so lazy, I'm never going to get this done. It's like, stop. Oftentimes in sessions, I will literally interrupt my clients and I'll say, redirect, nope, change that around. You're willing to replace some of those words. I am. It can be very simple. I am love. I am loved. I am loving. I am capable. I am successful, whatever it might be, but setting the foundation. So I am, very powerful language. And then secondly, I write about this concept in Misunderstood too. This is like a fitness test for your language. I want to test your language muscles. In Misunderstood, that I wrote about the power of language that will help you support and strengthen what you're trying to communicate as you assert your boundaries, clarify your feelings, your wants, what's in your best interest, and what isn't. A lot of times people have one of two extremes. They will have this tendency to be on this side and kind of like water down their message. They really kind of dilute themselves. I call it like wimpy or wobbly type language. And the opposite is true. They swing to the other side and they get really kind of extreme and reactive, maybe even hostile and defensive, and kind of come out swinging with these weaponing words during times of stress or conflict. It's important to know where you land. Are you someone who has a tendency more to water down your message, or do you do the other side and you kind of, this is more my side, like you kind of like weaponing with how you show up in the world? Stacy was a great example of this. She had read about these patterns and misunderstood, and she knew clearly she was very at risk of watering down her message with Mr. Perfect. And so we practiced several times what she needed to say. This is the power of talking things out, of aligning with your gut and your intuition, and even using your journal when you need to. So here's how she started out. You'll recognize her watering down. She was like, hey, listen, you're a really nice guy, but I know I'm probably crazy for doing this, but I think I'm going to cancel our plans for tomorrow. Right? Do you hear? I think I'm going to hear her wobbliness. I hope you're not mad at me, but I hope we can still be friends. You can just kind of sense her energy. And even she, mid-sentence, kind of stopped herself. And she's like, she said, she's like, oh, I don't know. After a few rounds, we got her back in the ring and we kind of worked through and kind of tightened up her language muscles. And here's where she landed. Listen to the difference between these. This is kind of that very middle place. I know we have plans for tomorrow and I'm going to cancel those. Thank you for the dinners and the time that we've spent, and I'm not interested in going out again. That's it, right? She didn't explain, she didn't justify, she didn't offer any excuses or make any type of false promises. She didn't worry about letting him down easily. She simply shared her perspective and the facts. She didn't want to go out with him again, and she allowed him to have whatever feelings or reactions that he needed to have, right? Talk about some tight muscles when you're speaking to other people. Do you have a tendency to dilute your message? Are you very passive? Do you use kind of placating and pleasing language? You get really wobbly. Hey, listen, if it's not a problem, I could use some help. Or I don't want to be a bother, but I haven't heard back from you. Hold on a minute, right? Like, where can you start to tighten up and shape up those muscles a little bit? Watering down is a very passive, docile way that you're going through the world. You might have a tendency to feel really walked on, maybe disrespected, or feeling like people aren't really hearing or honoring you. And you might have a tendency just to go along to get along, but wind up feeling really defeated and disappointed most of the time. You might be causing a lot of your own misery by the way you're wobbling, watering down, and diluting the message that you most want to communicate. And let's go to the other side, because like I said, this is way more my style. You might be on the other side of the spectrum. You might be someone who pops off and you overreact, you energetically and emotionally kind of you respond so strongly to different types of things. That needs just as much attention and kind of middling and to kind of get you to that midpoint. If you have strong reactions to things and you become pretty heated about stuff, then this type of response needs to be kind of diluted down. The other one needs to be strengthened. This one needs to be kind of, hold on a minute. When it comes to this tool of language, it's really important to get yourself grounded, to get yourself centered and clear about what it is you want to be able to say to someone. Learning how to respond rather than react will allow you to use this tool way more effectively. I want you to think about the childhood saying. You could easily minimize or make fun of this, but this is an important saying. Say what you mean what you say, but don't say it mean, right? It's really important to think about the power of your words. So we have added more now to your toolbox: journaling, kindness, and language. And this is so much for you to consider and practice. We're going to wrap up for today, and we're going to continue this toolbox even next time. I want to recap the tools before we end. I think there's a lot of power in repetition. We didn't learn the ABCs once, right? So we're going to go through this. Awareness: awake, alive, and alert at your own wheel. Boundaries: knowing who, when, how, why to say no or yes to someone or something. Commodities: understanding the precious value of your time, your energy, and the effort that you're spending. The decisions you're making day to day, starting your day, ending your day, and everything in between. What are you deciding on? And then also in terms of energy, recognizing that every single thing is energy, and how are you managing and using energy to your benefit? Honoring, listening, and respecting the feelings. That's the F tool. The practice of gratitude and being able to use it as an and practice. Maybe you have an actual way that you do it, a method that you use to practice gratitude, or maybe it's just simply a mindset that you try to engage in of shifting your focus to the things that are right. H stands for higher power, the relationship you have with an entity greater than yourself, good orderly direction, okay? Intuition, that gut, that intuitive way that things are nudging and speaking to you, something higher and bigger than you. Journaling as a tool and a technique for you to be able to use. Kindness, being very pure and deliberate about your motives and recognizing that this is not about pleasing or getting people to like you, but really being kind from a very full cup. And then we landed on language, the way that you use language and referring to yourself, the belief systems that you're willing to entertain, how you're speaking and representing yourself, but also kind of your muscles, like where are you with these statements and how you're showing up and communicating with people. These tools can be used individually, one at a time. You can pick one out of the toolbox and just use it. Or as you're starting to see, they can use to support and strengthen one another, to help you deal with things like making a decision that's right for you, having a hard conversation with someone, very much like Stacy did with Mr. Perfect, dealing with a crisis or some kind of loss. Every person deserves to feel capable and competent in their own life. And we aren't properly set up for those measures of success. I want to change that. I want to educate, equip, and empower people the best I can. So next time we're together, we're going to finish up this ABC toolbox. No matter what you're wiring, whether you are an empath or just a very typically wired person who's looking to get through life more easily, I believe that these tools can absolutely assist you. I want to thank you deeply for being here today, spending your time on the Ally Effect, authentically living life your way with me, Allyson Blythe. You can join me the first and third Thursday of every single month right here on Transformation Talk Radio. And I thank you deeply for being here. Have a great week, everyone. I'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ally Effect with Allyson Blythe. The moment you decide to take control of your own well-being, you start the journey of authenticity. Tune in next time for more empowering conversations and practical tools to help you shed your fear, worry, comparison, and less than beliefs. Stick with us as you step into the driver's seat and head off onto the road of success and happiness. Your best life awaits.